Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Final Fantasy VII Remake commentary. Now, Cloud isn't going to get any sleep yet.
Well, he's sleeping in his boots, so what do you think?
His clothes in general,
In his metal shoulder pads.
yeah,
Uh,
it's fine. It's fine. It's actually styrofoam.
so, Tifa decided to pay Cloud a visit. It's a good thing she decided to pay Cloud a visit after he got back from doing the mission that they ran off and did without telling anybody about it. So, the timing works.
Seems this old friend of mine's in a tight spot.
But this is the point where Cloud actually decided that he's going to hang around and help Tifa out. I like the way they paced this, because in the original game it was more like Tifa was nagging him, and he was like, "All right, Mom," but here it's more like it's a decision he comes to on his own after stepping away from
Yeah.
things for a little while. Um,
A change that I like. I like how warmer it makes Cloud.
But yeah, it does have the downside of taking a whole lot longer to happen, but it does give you it does come with a better sense for where the characters stand with each other. I also like this short conversation where Tifa pretty much acknowledges that yeah, Cloud is being a little bit of a hard edge, you could say, but he's starting.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? I'm losing my heart? I don't have that
He's-
lesson yet.
He's a bit of a mithril saber. I don't know what that means.
He's starting to loosen up a little in private, at least. So
Defrosting Ice King. Yeah.
so she can see that he genuinely cares, which is nice. But it's time to step away from the original games.
Kingdom Hearts bullshit.
Oh, come
Well,
on.
I'm thinking of Charles Dickens at the moment.
I thought this was a dream sequence at first. Like, I legitimately thought this was a dream sequence at first, and I found out, oh wait, no, this is actually happening.
So, in the context of what's happening now, are the Whispers entirely here because it took longer for Cloud to decide to join the mission, and he hadn't told Barret or the others that he was doing it, and they were about to leave without him? Is that what this is?
It's also a matter of Jessie wasn't so much the impetus as she was supposed to be.
Yeah, because you remember, as early as the party in the bar, when they said that we don't need Cloud for this one, that's when you got the first glimpse of the Whisper, because they realized, wait, something's happening. Like, this is not right. We need to intervene. And after the whole mission where they got the items they needed for the mission, like, okay, this is going way out of hand, so we need to intervene now.
Huh.
Like, that's what's
Yeah,
happening.
we need a way to force Cloud to go onto the mission.
Yeah, because that's what's supposed to
So, basically, a bunch of butterfly effect stuff happened, and the Whispers decided this morning that they had to step in just to get everyone back on the right.
I like this morning as if they just got up for a cup of coffee.
So
like, oh,
what
lovely
was
day to
the
be. Wait a minute.
catalyst that changed things?
Sephiroth.
Sephiroth
It
in the
is-
grand scheme, for this particular instance, story-wise, it's the fact that Jessie wasn't quite strong-arming Cloud enough to get on the mission itself.
Jesse, Tifa.
No, it's Tifa.
Tifa, sorry.
Yeah.
Ironically, it was Jesse who sort of helped convince Cloud to join anyway. But the upshot, though, is that things happened just differently enough that Cloud probably would have joined them after the second bombing mission instead of joining the second bombing mission. And since it was important that he be where he was at that time, they had to step in.
The Whispers needed to force him on the mission.
And if you're
Yeah.
in part 9 and haven't already spoiled this, I apologize, but at the same time...
We did put that warning in what the second part was.
Yeah.
So that's something I want to talk about, because I feel like it's not unreasonable for someone to play this game without having played the original Final Fantasy VII. Granted, the original Final Fantasy VII is like is a classic game, and it's widely assumed that if you're maybe our age, that if you have not played it, you at least know the general beats of it. You know, RPG PS1, Eris dies, Sephiroth, One Angel, hey, hey, bloody, you know.
Oh,
Man,
my
ham and
lord,
cheese.
giant sword.
Yeah, I mean, but granted, like, I'm the youngest one here, and I'm 27, and, you know, there are probably 16-year-olds who bought this game and probably know the name Final Fantasy VII. They probably, like, maybe know the Eris dies part. But, there's maybe 12-year-olds that got this game that don't know that. I don't know. I'm not keeping up with that kind of stuff. And
I think the Aerith dies thing is kind of the gaming equivalent to Darth Vader as Luke's father. Everyone just kind of knows going into it no matter what.
Yeah.
Just through sheer pop culture osmosis.
so, okay, but anyway, to get back to what my point is, I feel like these guys really only matter in the sense of, in the case of somebody who has played the game before. It's like, ooh, these are different. These aren't supposed to be here. And that makes you, as a person who's played the game before, wonder, okay, well then what the hell's up with them? For somebody who's never played the game, like, who never played the original, what purpose do these guys serve? Like, how do these...
The Whispers are a very meta concept.
yeah, like, how do they improve the experience of somebody who's never played the original, which is something I think you have to consider whenever you're making a remake or remaster. You have to consider, what if somebody's never played the original game before?
I mean, depends on the intent of the remake or remaster, because you get something like the Crash or the Spyro stuff that's straight up just being full remakes, or the Resident Evil ones where they're retellings and modernizing. This is a rare time where it's remaking things on a more meta level, so kind of naturally it's designed for older fans who already played the game.
Yeah, because it in a way makes Remake a sequel to the original.
To be fair, Final Fantasy VII is popular enough that it's one of the few games that could pull that off without too much of a drawback.
I feel like there are very few other RPGs that could even attempt this kind of thing. Grant, I agree in that
It's
sense.
7 Chrono Trigger to an extent, because that game's been built around time travel.
I honestly, I feel like Chrono Trigger even couldn't do something this severe. They couldn't have magic ghosts appear out of nowhere in a remake.
Well, no, I'm talking more of like change things on a meta level and kind of make it a fourth wall break sort of thing.
Yes, okay, I guess maybe they could pull away with that. I don't know. I'm just imagining if I had never played the original Final Fantasy VII before, seeing all these ghosts appear out of nowhere and then being like, what the hell is up with these guys? And then, you're not even really sure why this mattered, and the game will continue as if, like, what did this change? Nothing. The only thing that matters to somebody who, the only way these guys matters is that, oh, this means that the story could change in a way that it wasn't before. Okay, so if I played the original Final Fantasy VII, that means I can't trust my memories and what happened in the old game. Fine, but if you're playing this game for the first time, you already don't know what's going to happen, so these guys are superfluous. And I feel like they could have just changed things and done things different and just had it be a different telling of the same story, and they wouldn't have to justify it with stupid flying Dementors from Harry Potter. I don't know. I mean, I haven't played this game. It's way harder to see how effective these things are when I'm watching it for the first time and talking to you guys, and definitely not playing Magic Arena at the same time to get a full sense of the story. But I don't know. This whole idea has been bothering me the whole time of these stupid ghosts.
I like the idea, it's more just I agree, I don't like necessarily the execution of the Prisoners of Azkaban.
I think that setting aside the contention over the ghosts themselves being the ghosts that they are, I think that the effect that they have on the story, the specific moments in which they come up directly, are by and large pretty effective at what they do. Particularly in the moment that Jesse is about to die, and you realize, like half a second before it happens, what the ghosts are doing there. And you don't even have to see it happen, because when you get up the tower and you find Jesse there, you know what happened.
Well, no, you only know what happened if you've played the original game before.
No, you know what happened because the logical connection in your brain between the scene before she dies and the scene where you find her on the tower is clear enough that you can connect the dots yourself and realize how they must have intervened. And it's kind of a gut punch, to be honest. Anyway, this is a sort of semi-recurring mini-boss. I think it happens like twice, though. The Enigmatic Spectre, which is the bigger, more durable version of the mysterious specters that we're fighting. Basically, there's a gimmick to this boss. You have to destroy one of the mysterious specters first, and that will stun the Enigmatic Spectre enough to put it in pressured status for a little bit. And once you are in pressured status, you have to hit it with enough stuff to get that stagger bar up as far as it will go before it leaves pressured status again. It will not take much damage outside of pressured status, though, so you have to focus on the mysterious specters until it's pressured. If you can get it into pressured status and stagger it, though, its HP will drop like a rock. So this is more of a boss where you have to do a particular specific thing in order to do efficient damage against it, rather than it being a case of a damage sponge, as it might appear to be the first time you encounter it. That said, because Tifa is here, if you want to kill it quickly, like I just did, you also need to take advantage of that ability she has that drives up the stagger percentage as well. This battle can either take you a really long time to beat or no time at all, depending on how effectively you use that stagger bar. The other thing that they wanted to change here was that Jesse wasn't originally supposed to be on the mission.
No, again, this is the entire point of these whispers. They are here to course correct, to make sure things stay in line with the original 7 story, which you don't immediately get at first. I didn't immediately get until way later now.
That having been said, they didn't course correct perfectly either, because Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge did follow you on the mission to a point originally, but here they have to stay behind entirely, which means we don't get that kind of charming moment on the train where Jesse disguises herself as a male soldier, and if you compliment her on how she looks, she says, "Yay, I'm so happy," I think.
Because the thing, whispers are reactive. They can only react to when things are changing right then and there. I don't think they can actually go back into the past and prevent whatever was changing in the first place.
And that's the more things spiral out of control, the further you get into the game, the more directly they have to step in, and the later they are at actually stepping in. Well, for one thing, they wind up having to kill Wedge after he survives twice. Which was an even bigger gut punch for me than Jesse dying, because you actually thought Wedge was going to see the end of the game and survive, but he didn't. But at the same time, Biggs does survive the game because he spends it unconscious, and the Whispers have no reason to stop him from doing anything.
I still say Wedge is alive. Like, you don't fade to black unless you have the intention of keeping him alive.
He fell through a window outside of out from.
They faded to black as it was happening.
Yeah, but you heard the glass shatter.
Yeah.
And the things he was saying were like the last thoughts of the dying.
He had a grappling hook. He's alive.
Okay.
What?
He weighs a little more than 280.
I'm gonna
108.
108. Sorry, I always forget the number, but I mean he is over 280. I imagine.
Okay. So, right.
Some help from me, okay?
The way I look at it is, yeah, I know, like, the Whispers carried him to the edge of the building. You hear the glass break, but it's already faded to black at that point. And to me, in my eyes, you don't do that unless you want to keep it ambiguous.
Maybe.
And the only reason why you keep it ambiguous is because you have intentions of bringing him back for the sequel. The game is already changing things up considerably. Why the fuck not?
Maybe. That said, that they didn't set up like stuff that was left unresolved with Wedge either. With Biggs, we get some hints at a backstory with the orphanage and the slums, and that's where he is during the ending when he's recovering from his injuries. So there's
But that's
story.
But you can also say this. But you can also say that they had the intentions of doing that with Wedge too, because of the new possibilities.
Well, that's the thing. They made a point to set stuff up that they could do in the future with Biggs, but they didn't do that with Wedge. And they made a point to make sure you knew everything there was to know about Jessie before she died, because she's definitely dead. But with Wedge, it's more like he's just
like
kind of here.
It's like 95% you know everything about Wedge.
Yeah, but they didn't leave any obvious loose ends for you to wonder about, which makes me think, like, if they did intentionally leave it ambiguous, they might not be sure whether or not they want him there. So they might have left it open so that they could bring him back if they decided to while they were writing a future part. But
Which makes me think that in the later games, they're going to do more to expand Barret's origins with Coral.
maybe, yeah.
Because by not having Biggs, Wedge, and... Well, I mean, Jesse and Wedge are... Well, Jesse's definitely dead. But by having all three of them not dead does kind of weaken Barret's resolve in some aspects to a point.
Well, he doesn't know that Biggs is alive at the end of this game.
He doesn't know that Biggs is alive, but he also doesn't know Wedge is dead.
Yeah.
it's a little awkward there the way that. But you know what? If the sky is the limit now, the whispers are gone. Wouldn't it be wild if Dine survived and joined the party?
Oh, no. I hope that doesn't happen.
I am actually interested to see what they'll do with the other storylines now that they've pretty much telegraphed the notion that they're not bound by the original story anymore, though.
I mean, I would be fine if they just said that they could do that. I don't see why they needed to add. I know I'm harping on this, but I don't know why they needed to add a justification for it. They could just change things. Nothing says that they need to explain why, because the original game's always going
Okay,
to be there.
at the
You
same
can always
time,
go
if
back
they
to
if
it.
they didn't do something that specifically broadcasted the intent to change the plot lines, then people would get really, really salty at them whenever they did change something, and they would do
They're
it.
gonna get salty. They're gonna get salty.
Well, yeah,
no matter
at the
what.
same time, okay, because they drew this line in the sand right here and said, this is where things are going to change, and it's not going to follow the same plot line. Everyone knows what they're in for from this point onward.
Well, they could have just done that by having something be different, is the thing. Like, they could have, as early as the bombing mission, changed something major.
Yeah, but it's one of those, if you don't make it like some way a plot thing, fans will complain that, oh, you're changing things just to change things.
I mean, I don't think that you need to make it a part of the story.
Well,
like,
you don't have to.
I don't think that
but-
you need to either, but because Final Fantasy VII is such a big thing, the fact that they did is in its way both a protection for them and a protection for the audience. It's like the audience now knows that going forward, these are essentially new games and may not follow the prescribed plot line, and so they won't go into it expecting it to do.
Yeah. I mean, I just think of stuff like the Marvel movies, for example. They change things all the time in those, and they don't have to come up with a reason why this universe's Thanos doesn't love the concept of death and instead
Well,
cares
that's
about something
that's the
else.
difference between an adaptation versus
Yeah, that's
a
an
remake.
adaptation.
What makes this not
Because
an
it's in the
adaptation,
same
though?
medium, first of all.
Well, I mean,
The second thing, though, is that we don't usually see those kind of continuity alterations and multiple universes and stuff in video games. So it's not an expectation that the gaming community in particular is used to holding about things. So they baked in this story element that explains clearly to the audience that this is the way things are going to be, and gives a reason for it being that way in order to make sure that anyone who sticks with this series past the first game knows what they're into. So the people who buy Part 2, they're not going to go into Part 2 and then be hideously disappointed by the fact that things are different. If they bought Part 2, they knew it was going to be different, and they were okay with that going in.
Mind you, I think to an extent, Part 2 is going to, on a base level, follow a lot of the similar points in the post-Midgar. You're still going to run into Yuffie almost immediately. You'll probably do some stuff like that.
Still gonna run into Yuffie almost immediately. You know, I had to seriously try. I had to literally grind in that one forest outside Fort Coral to get Yuffie before Junin, because otherwise she wouldn't appear to me naturally until I was like near Cosmo Canyon or some shit.
Yeah, because we are also farming in the one area that has the lowest odds of encountering her.
Yeah, but I mean, you'll run into Yuffie, you'll do Cosmo Canyon, you'll do some similar things, but once you get to like Nibelheim, I imagine that's when things are really going to go off the rails.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, given how the rest of this game goes, you can't suddenly just constrain yourself to how the original 7 story played out. even for fan service or not, because then that goes against everything that you set up for this game, like in this game.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can't go immediately so off the rails. You're going to have to come up with a completely new scenario and introduction plots for Sid and Yuffie and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I just have a problem with explaining things that don't need to be explained. You know, not that it's a midi-chlorian level story faux pas here, but
It depends on what needs to be explained for a particular kind of story. There is an impact within the story that these guys have, and that is that Sephiroth is very much implied to know what is going on with the Whispers, to know that he lost in the original history, and to have been intentionally trying to get rid of the Whispers so that he has a shot to succeed this time. Which means that Sephiroth's motivations and his mindset for this entire storyline is fundamentally different than it was in the original game.
It's like a two-part plan. Part one, get
This
rid of
is
the Whispers.
jumping
Part two,
way
profit.
ahead, but at the end of Shinra Tower, Sephiroth behaves in a way that makes it seem like he is intentionally fucking with both Cloud's expectations and the player's expectations based on what they know of his behavior in the original game. Like, that the entire sequence where he appears before the Genova fight in the Shinra Tower is basically a play on how he killed Aerith in the original game, except it isn't Aerith he stabs, it's someone else entirely. And that's clever, honestly. I found that to be a really effective what the fuck is going on.
That's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like, because, like, and those listeners to the podcast I recorded months ago would not understand, like, on a surface level, originally, when I saw the Whispers and all the thing, I hated it. Absolutely. I was like, what's going on? Like, again, like, we raise the Kingdom Hearts flag, because this reeks of Nomura, all that sort of shit. But then, in discussions, past playing the game, all sort of thing, it's like, fuck me. It's like, they got me hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, it's one of those. I like the idea. I like the idea of, like, meta changing things beyond just we're changing things just because we can't, but weaving it into the narrative. I just don't like the Prisoner of Azkaban number of Kingdom Hearts.
You don't like
they're using to do so.
basically you don't like the fact that the vehicle that they used for this thing came in the form of these hooded wraiths that make you
Flying
that
bed
specifically
sheets,
bring to mind the Kingdom Hearts things. Maybe if they had gone with a different appearance for it, it would have softened the blow and made and caused you to make fewer mental connections with that. But
I guess I just hold no faith in Square Enix's ability to tell a coherent story.
That is perfectly fair. Because Ted, there's very much a strong possibility that this will all fuck itself over
Yeah,
in the end.
whether or not this is a good thing will depend entirely on whether Part 2 /
I can't wait until 7 Remake, The Last Jedi, and the Remake Part 3, Return of Sephiroth. You know?
okay. So
Rise of the Strike.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that again.
And then you just get Marlene at the end all grown up. He says, "Who are you?" "I'm Marlene. Marlene Strife."
Marlene Final Fantasy.
I will admit, though, that part of my reason for liking this approach comes from a slightly embarrassing place, and that is that I read a lot of fan fiction, and one of the most common concepts that fan fiction writers are terrible at actually doing anything with is the altered timeline, alternate universe concept, where something crucial changes and the butterfly effect of those changes ripple throughout the rest of the story after that point and utterly change the way that the plot and the characters progress from there. Like most of the time when a fan fiction writer does it, what it basically amounts to is
Self-inserts.
writing through the same script that you've already read in the original story, except with a new original character sitting in the background snarking at people the entire time.
That is basically
It's dull, but occasionally you get a really good example of it working, and well, those stories pretty much by sight because they're the ones the authors are, like, from the word go, putting a ridiculous amount of work into.
Well, I mean, I feel like there is because this is something that I will say, at the very least, this game is doing well in this sort of thing, is that if you are having one effect slowly change the outcome of the story, that means that the way the butterfly effect works is it doesn't become big changes until later on.
Yeah.
So the stuff near the beginning needs to stay mostly the same.
Yeah.
Which this game is doing, and the better versions of that fanfiction author will usually.
And the farther and farther through that you get, the bigger and more drastic the changes that the Whispers have to intervene to basically cock block them. They get more and more obvious the further you go through the game. And then at the end, the Whispers are taken out of the equation. So it's like, hey, if things continue to go the way they've been going throughout this story without the Whispers around to stop it from happening, then what the hell is going to happen in part 2? It's
Basically, imagine it's a classic bottleneck. Like, imagine a beer bottle slowly filling up with liquid. Like, it starts slow until it reaches the tip, and then it just shoots up.
Yeah.
Like, that's how out of control it gets by the end of this game.
And it's interesting. It's that kind of story written by a team of professionals that most interests me in this case, where I want to see what these talented career writers can do with that kind of concept, and I want to see how people react to that. Most of all, I just want to see what kind of new and crazy gameplay scenarios they can invent while they're going through it.
Oh, I can't wait to see how both Yuffie and K3 play.
Hey, guys, I'm still in here.
I have to kill this guy first.
There's robots in here. It's scary.
So there is a timer in this section of the game, kind of like in the original.
It's very generous.
It's way bigger than the
in the original you had like 15 seconds to get through the train, which wouldn't have been a problem, except that there are things that happen in every car, and if you want to get all the possible items and or keep all of your money, you have to react to them really fast. In fact, you have to react to them too fast to read the dialogue that pops up. It's annoying. But if you in the original game, if you manage to get to the front car, without the timer running out in any of the cars, you would be able to start in the train tracks as close to the end of the tracks as possible. I like that moment where the Shinra employee is just sort of like really, really confused by why Avalanche is showing so much concern for civilian casualties here. That was just a nice moment. The guy that Barret heckles on the train got the most character development out of everyone in this goddamn remake, and it's great. I wonder if we'll ever see him again.
Probably not.
He was kind of a recurrent background character in the original. I wouldn't be surprised if he.
Wait, was he? Where else did we
see
him?
him a couple of times. The only media example I can think of besides Shinra is in Junin.
Oh, he was like in a room complaining about the hotel accommodations?
I believe it was that, and he is also one of the characters that gets blown away by Rufus's helicopter.
Oh.
As he's landing on Costa del Sol.
Okay, I will say I do like how Barret has to talk himself into jumping out by saying that he's going to show everybody else how to do it.
Yeah.
He also jumps back. He also jumps out first and way further back in the train tracks, so he doesn't rejoin you right away.
Also, I mean, they did do a good job in saying that's how you're supposed to jump. If you have to, use how you're supposed to jump out of a moving vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I know what they're gonna do. They're gonna kill Tifa instead of Eris. That's what.
Please don't say that.
Don't say that, please.
Please don't say
If
that.
they want to change something but keep the most fundamental and memorable part of Final Fantasy VII into the game, they're gonna twist it on you, and instead of killing Eris, they're gonna kill Tifa.
No, stab Kate Sith.
No, Kate Sith's the best character
Kate
in the
Sith
game.
already got killed off in the original story. He just got better, okay?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't mind it. Just kill him again.
It's okay, then you'll be able to buy the Save Tifa DLC afterwards.
If they were gonna kill Kate Sith, they'd have to kill Reeve, which is not outside the realm of possibility, actually.
But that wouldn't have anywhere near as impact, though.
I think it might, because they're showing enough of Reeve in this game. You know what? That's the one good thing that they took from Dirge of Cerberus, is that Reeve has screen time now.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, seeing Reeve stressing out over Shinra being a bag of dicks, it was a legitimately nice little thing. I could have done without the cat doll making a cameo, When
I didn't like that.
Yeah, that had no reason to be there other than, hey fans, look at Keiichi.
Well, I mean, I don't see why you need to do a cameo when they're absolutely going to put that into the next game.
Yeah, that's why that's why it sucks in this game.
Well, that and everyone who's played the original game already knows Reeve is Keiichi, so we already have.
Yeah, it feels like the one time that this game makes a concession to the people who might be playing the remake without playing the original game is to throw in a Kate Sith cameo, so that there's foreshadowing they can look back on after they get to part 2 or part 3 and realize who.
The problem
Kate
is
Sith
that it's right in the middle of Sector 7 falling, so it's like, what?
The oddball thing about Kate Sith and Reeve in the original game, though, is that you didn't actually see Reeve all that much, and the revelation that Reeve and Kate Sith were the same person came pretty far out of nowhere.
It also didn't happen that far after you recruited Kate Sith, even. Like, if I remember correctly.
Well, the revelation that he was a traitor didn't happen until a good few areas after recruiting Kate Sith. But the revelation that Reeve was the person specifically controlling Kate Sith wasn't something that came until like Disc 2, and it was kind of just casually thrown in there. Like, there wasn't really any foreshadowing that Reeve was interacting with the plot in a significant way, and when it finally does get mentioned that Reeve and Kate Sith are the same person, I think the first direct mention of it is during the assault on Midgar at the very end. And Reeve getting put under house arrest somehow doesn't stop him from controlling Kate Sith, and it's never addressed how that is or why.
Remote control.
But
yeah, bite my shiny metal ass hide again.
By the way, we know it's supposed to be pronounced Ketchi because it's Gaelic.
Yeah.
But it's phonetically, we pronounce it as Kate, because that's what we all know.
Listen, if I'm talking about the mythological being, then it's Keiichi. If I'm talking about Final Fantasy VII, then it's Kate Sith.
Hey, has it ever been verbally pronounced by a voice actor in this series before?
It's a reference. I'm going to assume it's supposed to be pronounced like what it's referencing.
Well, yeah, but has anyone ever actually, like...
I don't remember if Dirge Cerberus...
In Advent Children or Dirge Cerberus or anything that has Kate Sith...
Advent Children, definitely.
Advent Children, no.
No. Yeah, so nobody's actually verbally said it. So it's not like a Titus Titus or Aerith situation where we've had time to get used to hearing people say this thing in this particular way. Like... I can't... Like, I'm not even sure how to pronounce the correct pronunciation correctly, so I just default to what I'm used to.
Sure thing, Coach.
It's one of those things where I, like, subconsciously know that it's supposed to be said Keiichi, or however you're supposed to say
Ketchi,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, or Keiichi, but I've read it and said it out loud as Kate Sith for so long.
Let me see if it does the same thing where it comes up with Final Fantasy VII if you type it in just like Sephiroth.
Oh yeah, like the
Kate Sith. Yeah, you type in Kate Sith and it's Final Fantasy VII, not the Gaelic reference.
The Sephiroth is a legitimate religious thing.
Yeah, but if you type it into Google, it's always Final Fantasy VII Sephiroth.
And you know what? Every time Kate Sith or Catchy pops up in a pop culture thing, it seems like they always mispronounce it. Because in Sword Art Online, there's a race of fairies in the Alfheim Online game, too, that is supposed to be named the same thing. Do you know how they pronounce it there? Catsy. Catsy. Not...
That sounds like something Gollum would say. Like, oh, those catsy fairies. Those catsy fairies riding their moons.
We loves Kate Sith. We hates Ketchi.
I am, though, legitimately interested to see what Kate Sith will play like once he's introduced, because that promises to be interesting.
We love his changes to the remake, but we hate whispers. We hate them.
Yeah, this is essentially everyone's response to 7 Remake in the opening 2 weeks. We are all Gollum. Instead of a ring, it's a materia.
Yeah, so what would that turn the potato scene into?
Oh,
I don't know, but the riddle that Nomura told
Oh, no.
Kate Shee in order to be able to make this remake was how many people live inside Sora.
Oh no,
in Kingdom
Barrett
Hearts?
started doing it.
Stupid, Nomura.
Barrett's starting, guys. He just said, "This calls for a song." Da 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 da. It was funny the first 3 times, Barrett, but
Around the 7th time, it gets a little old.
yeah. I mean, it's
Barrett's the kind of douchebag who would play his own music on his stereo he has installed in his gun arm. Isn't he?
Hey, yes, the opposite, because this theme is not actually in this game except for the
he
jukebox.
probably would. He'd probably also spring for heavy bass in his gun arm speakers too.
Yeah, so then it would be more like.
So you could hear it over the gunshots.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, yeah, we are starting the second bombing mission, and this is the first time that we have Barret for an especially long stretch of the game.
Okay, sorry. I need a. How does Midgar have a more coherent subway system than Boston does?
Because it's a giant circle.
It's a giant circle. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, Boston probably doesn't have much city planning put into it.
No, they literally just.
I mean, it was a city built in the 1600s. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's also built on garbage because they just tossed all their garbage into the ocean in order to put enough space to build a city there. Because the soil
Boston
around
subway
here
system
sucks.
is a child attempt at solving a maze running into every dead end imaginable.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, on the other hand, Chicago literally lifted the city 10 feet off the ground to make room for a sewer system.
Which actually is such a stupid idea. It gets props for actually working.
Well, it's because they couldn't dig into the ground, because if you dug into the ground, it would hit the water table of the Great Lake.
You know what I really like
So.
as far as details go? Heidegger is graying, and you can see individual gray strands of hair in his beard. Just little standalone gray strands that have lost their color because he's aging.
Well, like, he gets more gray hairs as the game continues along. He's tired of putting up with Avalanche's shit.
It's an interesting detail because there was nothing about his original character model that suggested he was graying, because Final Fantasy VII graphics tended to have a lot of flat color.
They wanted to insinuate that he was older because he's a contemporary with President Shinra.
Well, yeah, and that's accurate. It's just not something that the original game had as a visual detail at any point. Like, I think the most detailed thing about Heidegger was the scar on his face. But, it's interesting that they thought to add those little details to him. It's also really interesting how they portrayed him, because his single solitary character trait in the original game was his laugh. Gyahaha. In fact, Kate Sith at one point refers to Heidegger and Scarlet as Gyahaha and Quahaha, because they both have their distinctive evil laughs, and that's their only character traits.
Stupid horse laugh, according to Rufus.
Yeah. So it's interesting that they took that, ran with it, and fleshed him out into this egotistical schemer, I guess.
Well, wannabe schemer. He's not very good at it.
It really works, and they might be using some character traits they ascribed to him in Before Crisis, because I know he appears there, but it really works. I'm glad that they were able to flesh Heidegger out to this extent. I wish I could say the same thing of Scarlet, but we don't actually see much of Scarlet in this game, so
Yeah, I imagine they're going to save her for
yeah,
later.
jury's still out there. In any case, thank you all for watching, and we will see you all next time in Part 10.